Nibba's really be making songs titled Harvest of Distilled Organs, and it be sounding like this. Here's another one. This is called Hydroxymorphine by the band Ungrateful from the album There Is No God Here. Where is here? Your mom's basement? Okay, so I wanted to talk about this phenomenon that is metal music, right? Now, I'm allowed to talk crap on metal because I used to be in a metal band, right? But I wanted to address the fact that, like, there is so much bad metal out there. Like, there's some great metal, you know? And it's fun to listen to, you know, you get your good pump on at the gym to it, right? But, like, there's so much metal, and it's, like, the great majority of it is complete trash. And I'm not speaking from, like, a perspective of someone who's like, oh, I like all kinds of music except screamo or whatever, because you just think it sounds, you know, too loud or whatever. Like, it's genuinely bad music. From the mixing, like, the guitars sound like muddy water, and the drums are very obviously a drum machine, you know, just drum machine blast beats, and then some awful guttural. And, like, all of that, like, meshed together just sounds like utter garbage, you know? And I think the reason that is because everyone who, like, you know, claims to be a musician or, like, loves music, they usually will start out as some kind of metal band, because, you know, when you're young and you've, you know, listened to music, or when you're starting to listen to music, you're like, oh, well, you know, I think metal is the best genre. At least this was my mentality. I thought, you know, metal is the best genre because, you know, it takes the most talent, the most musical talent to play it. You know, because it's very fast, it's very technical, you know, very speedy all around, right? And so because of that, I think a lot of people who love music, they really get into it. And they decide they want to make metal music. And so with that being said, that then leads to a bunch of kids who really have no idea what they're doing getting into music and making metal bands. And so that's why there's so much metal and all of it sucks, is because it's these kids who, like, they listen to metal and they're like, oh, metal's great because it's fast, it's technical, I want to do that. Metal takes not only a lot of technical prowess when it comes to, like, playing your instruments, but it's also very you got to know how to mix it properly, right? Like, I think some of the best metal that's out there right now, personally, is stuff that's produced by guys like Mick Gordon. Like, the reason I even was talking about this is because I'm listening to the Doom Eternal soundtrack, and it's like some great industrial metal, really good to bang your head to, great for listening to at the gym. And I was like, I want to see if I can find more stuff like that. But everything else that's like that is just, like, absolute guttural garbage. When it comes to, like, the instrumentals, the vocals, you know, you name it, it's not good. And so another thing that I kind of wanted to complain about when it comes to metal is how every single band is some kind of subgenre, right? Like, it can't all just be metal, you know? But I'm getting a little off track. Anyway, back to the whole, like, there's so much of it. Like, there's so much of all kinds of music now, right? Like, you can find any subgenre, you can basically find whatever music you want right now, you know? However, you know, there are lots of indie folk bands, right? And there are tons of, like, smaller local ones, but with that kind of music, it's so much harder to sound bad, if that makes sense, right? Like, you can have a band that's like the style of the Lumineers or Fleet Foxes, for instance, and they're probably not going to sound bad. They're probably just going to sound exactly like those bands, which isn't a bad thing, you know, because that kind of music it doesn't take as much technical prowess and knowledge about mixing to make it actually sound good. And so, like, yeah, you're gonna get, there probably is the same amount of music, from that type of genre, like, whether that's techno, indie, folk, pop, whatever. But all of it's gonna sound relatively the same, and that's not a bad thing. Like, you could probably just throw it on shuffle, and you're gonna have a good time. Whereas when it comes to metal, if you're just going to like, okay, I want to hear new stuff, you're going to get so much trash. Um, and you're going to have a really hard time sifting through the garbage trying to find like one good track that you can put on your gym playlist. So honestly, it's best to just stick with the greats on that kind of stuff. Stick with the guys that we already know. There's a reason that these metal bands are more popular is because they don't sound like garbage. But anyway, my last point, back to the whole subgenre thing, is like every single band from metal is like some weird subgenre of metal, Like if you want just like raw, just like regular metal, I personally like the closest I would think to something like that would be I don't know, like Metallica or Testament or like Iron Maiden or Megadeth, right? But even then, like those guys, like you talk to a lot of metalheads, and they're gonna be like, oh well, actually, Testament is power metal, whereas Iron Maiden and Metallica, or Iron Maiden is more like opera metal, and Metallica is more of like a '80s hair metal, and those are all subgenres of metal, right? And it's the same thing, like, oh, I want to listen to Between the Buried and Me. Are they prog metal? Well, no, they're technically mathcore. Well, what's mathcore? Mathcore is, it's kind of like hardcore music, but it's a little more technical and more on the progressive side. It's like, you just get so lost within it, So that's kind of another reason why I abandoned that scene, was because, like, anytime someone asked me what kind of music I listen to, not only was it extremely embarrassing for me to say that I listen to mathcore, but it's also like when I'm talking to other metalheads, you have to say specifically a list of every single band you like because you're not going to know the correct subgenres for them. Metal sucks. Okay, you got to stop listening to it. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk, guys. Have a good evening.